Everybody, my name is Josh Tepper. I'm 28 years old, and the reason why I'm doing this podcast is because I'm kind of at a standstill in my life, and I don't think a lot of podcasts start like that. It's usually someone who's accomplished something, someone who's has something of importance, which I haven't really accomplished anything huge yet. So I don't have really anything much of importance right now. So I'm just going to speak. So I'm 28 years old. I was born in New York City. No, actually, that's not true. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland. And I'm a twin. And we lived there for, I think, almost a year. And then we moved to Port Jefferson. And then we ended up in New York City. So I am a New Yorker. I went to Rylander Nursery School, and then I went to a bunch of private schools, and then for high school I went to LaGuardia High School, and I was a vocal major, and I was a very eager high schooler. I was pretty kept to myself in school, very quiet, but I had a lot of big dreams, and I wanted to meet a lot of interesting people and do a lot of interesting things, which is why I've gotten myself into some trouble. And then from there I went to NYU Tisch, and I was a cinema studies major, and I was a really ambitious college student and had a lot of big hopes and dreams and wanting to always feel kind of this sense of excitement and being part of something that like you would see in the news or through art. So I interned at Goop.com, and I was a brand partnerships an events intern, and that was a lot of fun, and got to go to the weekly meetings that Gwyneth Paltrow led, and it was super exciting kind of to see a celebrity in the real form for me at that time, I should say, not now, but at that time, and just seeing like the human side and being inspired by the aesthetic at Goop. I really liked the aesthetic and learning about wellness and, changing the way we live so we can live longer. So I had a really, really great time there. And it was actually considered an NYU Tisch class, which was pretty cool. But I really put my all into it. I felt like I acted like I was an employee, and I had a really positive experience there. And then I went to Cynthia Rowley, and she took a liking to me, and I got to be like kind of really assist her head on, and worked on a podcast she had with her daughter, Kit Keenan. And then COVID happened, and then I kind of worked remotely. And then after that, I was officially a college graduate, and the world was in such a bizarre place. No one knew where anything was going. No one knew when COVID was going to end, or it was a very rough time. So in the meantime, I ended up getting some media job at a real estate firm that I didn't stay very long for, and then I was so unsatisfied creatively in that job that I ended up emailing a whole bunch of people who I thought would be super interesting, and one of them happened to be Kelly Ben-Simone, and she responded within 15 minutes of me emailing her. And what was really interesting about that is I had actually written to Kelly 6 years earlier, and I was very close to getting the job, and for some reason I think they thought I didn't have enough experience. So 6 years later, I have a job interview with her. I meet her. There's like paparazzi at St. Ambrose, and I end up getting the job. And I remember waking up the next morning and seeing photos of myself having that job interview, and I thought, okay, I think, and I had gotten the job at the interview, so I was like, okay, this is going to be kind of an interesting time in my life. I think there's a lot of excitement that can come from it, and I can learn a lot from this individual, and I did. And at the time, she was doing very well, she continues to do very well in real estate, and so it was about kind of getting her, I don't remember. She just wanted to be more, I think, back in the media in a different, slightly more prevalent in the media. She was getting a lot of good press, and I learned a lot about PR and marketing and how to handle all sorts of situations. It was a really, sink or swim kind of situation. And I really did swim, even though I sunk at different times. But I think I learned a lot, and it was a very on hands-on experience with someone who does a lot of different things. And then after about a year and a half, 2 years there, I ended up going into real estate full-time, and that I realized was not for me. I did not like it. I have not had one good experience on a real estate team. I'm sorry to say. There's just a lot of mind games, and it's basically narcissistic sharks every which way you go. It's a very feisty industry, and it's funny because you think, okay, I'm here to sell your home or sell someone's home filled with, value and emotions, and behind the scenes, it's so vicious, and a lot of brokers are not brokers, and within the firms, there's a lot of crazy shit that goes on, like favoritism, which happens, I guess, everywhere, and who gets more budget, and people are always trying to get on TV shows, and then half of the work is done by people that are on the team, but they're 21, and they're getting like nothing for the listing, like $80 for the day. Like, there's a lot of crazy it's almost worse than fashion, I would say. I mean, I have worked in media, fashion, celebrity circuits. Real estate has the most vicious behavior I think I've ever seen. Like, a lot of low regard for humanity. So I was like, okay, I really don't like this at all. And so I ended up meeting these two people who owned a gym, and I ended up working there for a little bit. And that was cool because I got to be really creative. And it was a startup mentality. And so that was actually kind of fun. And I went on some cool weekends with the owners, with some really cool clients. So it was a very, it was not your typical job, but it was an experience, and I learned a lot of life lessons from it and from those people. So that was super cool. And then I recently started a company which is now taking, I guess, I don't know. It might pivot. I might leave it where it is. I don't know. So anyway, I'm in a really interesting time in my life, and so I want to speak to anybody that will listen, because I don't know what this next kind of chapter holds for me, because, well, I also sing. I'm a singer. I always forget to mention that. I sing and I perform, and I really, really enjoy doing that. So you should check me out on Spotify, Josh Tepper. So I do love music, but obviously I'm being realistic right now that I can't, just make money off music. So a topic that's been on my mind, or a phrase that I kind of discovered, is that I think there's a war going on in the world, and it's narcissists versus empaths. And that's something that I've really been thinking about, because I think I've encountered a lot of empaths and have worked with a lot of empaths, but I've also worked with many, 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 many narcissistic people. And the hard thing about those narcissistic relationships is that when you're in one, it kind of feels like a movie. And they kind of live like they're in a movie, because they create chaos, but they also kind of entrap you in a way that's very cinematic. Like, first it's like they love bomb you and it's all great, and you feel like, wow, I really met, even if it's a friend or if it's a romantic relationship. I've experienced, I think it happens in both ways. So, or if there's an attraction on either side. But even if it's just a friendship, it's like a movie. They love you. It's like you're doing all these cool kind of adventurous things. They're very spontaneous, and it's like, wow. And then you have, like, quote unquote, like, your first fight, and they'll like start shit out of nowhere, and then you might not hear from them, and then they come back, and then they love bomb you again, and it feels like the end of the movie, except the movie keeps happening in that cycle over and over and over. Like, all rom-coms are basically about narcissistic abuse, because it's that emotional, cycle where you have a fight, and then they devalue you, and then they don't talk to you, and then it's all okay. But then the movie ends, but you don't see what happens after that movie. So you probably know that you're in, I mean, again, I'm not licensed at all. I'm just telling you from my experience. So I know if I feel like a relationship feels like, or a friendship feels like some sort of, feels like a movie, I'm like, okay, that's actually a red flag. Because life is not a movie. Life is actually supposed to be, well, life is chaotic all the time, but your relationships, I should say, life is chaotic, but your relationships should be the things that make them not chaotic. Someone you could talk to, someone who really understands, someone who checks in on you, someone who doesn't, whose ego's in check and is not fragile, that you don't get angry over ridiculous shit. So I think as I look back in my 20s, I'm really seeing that I was a magnet, yes, to many empathic people, but also a lot of narcissistic people, a lot of people that I met in college, and some, yes, that I worked with. But, and I don't want to talk about those relationships in particular. I want to talk about like the themes that I've seen. And another thing for me, and again, I guess this is with the love bombing, is like they put you on a pedestal. They talk like you're a savior or like this angel on earth. And yes, things like this have been said to me by certain individuals. Or they think you're like this light, and while you're hearing it, it's really, really obviously flattering, and you feel special, which is what they want to make you feel. If they genuinely believe it, I think a psychiatrist would say no. I think people with this disorder do have magical thinking, so I'm gonna say that some of them, I think, genuinely do. There's a bit of that magical. That's another sign, is like this magical thinking. Again, I do believe in manifesting, and I do believe in God, but what I have found with a lot of these narcissists is they think that they're really hardworking, and a lot of them that I've met, again, there are hardworking narcissists, but in my experience, a lot of them are not as hardworking as they want you to believe, or as smart. And so, what was I saying? And so they tend to use that, yeah, instead of doing the hard work, they use like these magical thinking tactics to get it done, even though that's actually not going to get the work done. You can lay down and manifest and pray and talk big things. I think all those things are great, and I do them, but you also have to do the work. Like, you can't just lay down and put crystals on yourself and say, okay, and the opportunity will be brought to me. Again, I am an Abraham Hicks listener, and yes, I would love to say, I mean, I think you can relax and also be proactive. I think if you relax and absolutely do nothing, there's almost no chance it's going to happen. So there's like this magical thinking trend that I see, and this also, it's sort of like even if they're well liked, inside they're like this insecure high schoolers, so they really want to be associated with money or people with money, and like they think about money in a very grandiose way, like, wow, do you think that's I can't explain it, like numbers are just like, wow, like that person's a multi-millionaire, or wow, that person probably spent $10,000 on that jacket, like these crazy ideas and numbers, and really don't have any true grasp of finances. And the ones that I've met, even if they're successful, they're never truly in tuned to reality, which is, I think, part of this personality disorder. Everything's grandiose and bigger than life, and they themselves are bigger than life. It's very much like a metaphor from The Wizard of Oz. Like, they all portray themselves to be these, even if no one knows who they are. In their own minds, there are these legends, and they've accomplished these incredible things, and people are stunned by them, and they have this thing to them, but really behind the curtain, they are like, because I've been friends with them, it's very, very sad and bleak. They have no self-worth. They have the most fragile ego. They truly don't believe what they're saying. That's why that, to me, where the narc rage comes from, is the frustration of not living up to their delusions. And that's because I've been with narcs when they're raging at me, or raging at someone else, or raging at the wind. A lot of it gets triggered to me by when they feel that they're not living up to their delusion, because they do. I've seen them in moments, and if you really, you can get almost to a point where they will almost admit it, but then it's like it's like Shutter Island at the end when, sorry if you haven't seen Shutter Island. Well, it's like they almost get him to acceptance that, his wife, I believe, killed his children, and so that's his path forward, but he goes right back into that delusion where he thinks he's a detective. It's sort of like that to me with the narcissist. Like, you actually can almost get them to, like, okay, they're thinking normal, they're acting normal, they're saying normal things, and then it's that insecurity, and they go back into that kind of safe, kind of like that kennel of this grandiose, and they go into their kennel, and then they project like that Wizard of Oz image, but it's not real. So when you get close to them in the beginning, it's who they maybe want to be and things that they do admire in other people, but it's not really them, because really on the inside they're these just sad and angry people. And as they get older, they also get worse. So they just become a grump. Like, to me, older people who are grumps are just narcissists that are just too tired to put on the mask because they don't need to. They're not at work. They're just like in a nursing home. They're just a grump. That's a narcissist to me, because they have no need to actually put on their mask anymore. So when you do get to them finally and you crack them, they're just envious and angry, and you see just a very unhappy person. So it is a war, narcissists versus empaths, because some of them do succeed. A lot of them do. Ones that are more rational. I have to say, I've met a lot of histrionic narcissists that are not rational, but the ones that are rational as rational as a narcissist can be, and gets to a job where they're in a place where they're in power, and then an empath who's in power, that's really the bigger war. Because right now, even in our political arena, all over the world, it's just narcissists versus narcissists. Like, these people do, we've accepted that certain people should get ahead, and because they believe that they're the best. And so some people, there are going to be narcissists that achieve selling their bullshit and getting people to vote for them or buy their music or watch their movies. I guess that there's other narcissists that win, and for some reason as a society we've let that personality take over, because it's like they think they're so great, so we need to think they're great. It's sort of like the popular group in high school. Like, why do we, like, and our parents always tell us, well, you make them popular if you make, like, they are popular if you make them popular. Like, what if all the empaths were like, no, we're the best, and that's bullshit? And that is what's happening. That's why independent media is taking off. I mean, look, I'm not saying who I agree with, but it is why the election went the way it did. People wanted something different, even though Trump is a narcissist. But it was like the swing to another narrative. So things are. So okay, I take that back. I guess the political, even though people do want some sort of change. So no, it works with independent media. Take out Trump and Republicans, but a lot of Republicans are on independent media. So there's this idea of something different, not something that's contrived. Now, I'm not saying that everyone on independent media is not a narcissist. I'm just saying I think we're trying to pull back the curtain a little bit, and that was like the first step. But I hope through actual truth that more empaths will take over. I don't know if they will. But no, I do. I think we're headed toward another direction. And I think that will I actually think the answer to our political problem isn't a Democrat or a Republican, but I think it's, instead of having a narcissistic leader, that would be the major change, is having an empathic leader. And I actually don't believe that we've ever had one in this country. The ones who we think are more empathic just have a better mask, in my opinion. So I think we need like a real empath, and maybe I think that would be the answer. So a rational empath. I'm not saying someone who just, someone who just has feeling and logic, because, so take out the word, a normal person. Someone who could do business, someone who has feelings, and someone who can conduct themselves like an adult and not act like they're playing Battleship. I think that would be really good. Yeah. Okay, so I think together we'll figure out this war between narcissists and empaths. Till next time.